Well, hey there, and welcome back to Heimler's History. Now, we've been going through Unit 3 of the AP Government curriculum, and in this video, it's time to start talking about the specific amendments in the Bill of Rights. So I reckon we ought to start by talking about the First Amendment and religion. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milk separation of church and state style, then let's get to it. Okay, in this video, here's what we're trying to do. Explain the extent to which the Supreme Court's interpretation of the First Amendment reflects a commitment to individual liberty. So we're talking about how the court has interpreted the First Amendment over time and how that has impacted the ability of folks like you and me to practice our religious beliefs. And we really have to emphasize practicing our beliefs, because all of this really comes down to practice and not belief. Like, you can believe any dang thing you want and nobody's gonna stop you. If your religion teaches that the world is governed by galactic reptilian overlords who forgive your sins as long as you slap a zebra in the face and then eat the hair right off of its tail in the light of the full moon, that's fine. You do you, boo. But if you show up at the zoo and start trying to practice your religion, then the police are gonna have something to say about it. So the First Amendment's protection of religion is extremely important, but just like every other right we have, it is not absolute. There is a balance to be had, and in this case, the balance is always between the religious practice of the majority and the free exercise of minority religious practice. So before we get into how the Supreme Court has sought to strike this balance in a couple of required cases, let's make sure we understand the First Amendment itself. The part of the First Amendment we're considering here reads as follows: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Okay, now in that sentence, there are two clauses you need to know. The first is the Establishment Clause, which prohibits Congress from establishing a national church. The second is the Free Exercise Clause, which protects the rights of citizens to practice their religion without interference from the government. Now, you may have heard that phrase, the wall of separation between church and state, and that comes from a letter written by Thomas Jefferson giving his interpretation of the Establishment and Free Exercise Clauses, and he said this: "I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state." All right, now put that in your pocket. We'll get back to that in a minute. Now, over time, many different actors have sought to strengthen that wall or to weaken it, and a good example of the thickening of that wall of separation is the Johnson Amendment. This little amendment was attached to a 1954 tax bill by then-Senator Lyndon Johnson, and it said that if a church receives tax-exempt status, then the pastors and priests of those churches cannot endorse political candidates from their pulpits. Now, to be clear, preachers can endorse whomever they want if they're not concerned about their church paying taxes, but most churches very much are concerned about that, and so the Johnson Amendment holds their tongue. Now, the Johnson Amendment has been the bane of conservatives since it was passed, even all the way up to the most recent Republican president, Donald Trump, who vowed to completely overturn the Johnson Amendment so that preachers can have their free speech back. Now, as students of AP government, you will no doubt know that a president has precisely zero constitutional power to overturn an established law, but regardless, the Johnson Amendment is an example of the battle over how thick or thin that wall of separation should be. Okay, now that we've established what the freedom of religion looks like according to the First Amendment, let's see how the Supreme Court has interpreted this freedom in two required cases. And as with every required case, I have a whole video on each going into the details and everything you need to know, so here I'm only going to talk about them in general. The first case is Engel v. Vitale, which was decided in 1962, and it has everything to do with whether prayer in public schools is constitutional. So basically what happened is that the New York State Board of Regents authorized a short non-sectarian prayer to be recited by school children at the beginning of each school day. And, as far as non-sectarian prayers go, this one was pretty non-sectarian. It just contained general language about God and asking for his blessing. And what's more, the prayer was voluntary. If kids or parents didn't want to say it, they didn't have to. But even so, the Supreme Court deemed this a violation of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, thus ruling state-sponsored prayer in schools unconstitutional. And in his majority opinion on this case, Justice Hugo Black justified it by invoking Jefferson's wall of separation language, saying that no government had any business writing prayers for its citizens to pray. So this case is very much an example of the Supreme Court upholding individual religious liberty, especially in this case, parents who objected to prayer in schools. All right, the second case you need to know is a case on the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment, namely Wisconsin v. Yoder, which was decided in 1972. So this case had to do with a group of Amish parents who were patently not fans of Wisconsin's compulsory education law, which conflicted with the Amish practice of removing their children from school after 8th grade. The Amish thought 8th grades were enough, and after that, their children were better served through vocational training in their communities. Therefore, they complained that the Wisconsin law violated the free exercise of their religion, and as it turned out, the court agreed that it was a violation of these Amish people's right to free exercise. If they were required to keep their children in school, the children might be exposed to influence that would be contrary to the community's religious values. So again, this is an example of the court upholding the individual liberty of free free exercise of religion. However, that trend isn't always the case. Like, what if your religion demands a practice that is illegal? Well, that was decided in 1990 in the non-required case Employment Division v. Smith, in which the court ruled against the free exercise of two men who had used hallucinogenic drugs as part of a Native American church ritual. Like I said at the beginning, none of our liberties is absolute. There are limits, and the court ruled that the free exercise of religion could be restricted if that practice was otherwise illegal. Well, alright, that's what you need to know about Unit 3, Topic 2 of the AP Government Curriculum. Click right here to grab a review packet, which will help you get an A in your class and a 5 on your exam in May. And look, I will in no way restrict your right of free exercise to subscribe to my channel, and if you do, that tells me you want me to keep making these videos. So, I'll see you in the next one. Heimler out.